Hello, and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video, we're going to keep looking at the Shadowmoor decks, and we're going to look at Aura Mastery, which is the white and blue deck. So we've got the deck list here. It is 22 creatures, 8 enchantments, 1 sorcery, 5 instants, 24 land, and mana curve off to the side there. Let's start looking at the creatures. So, it's a blue-white deck, which kind of means, evasive creatures, kind of soft control options, some flyers. Yeah, the kind of standard white-blue. There is meant to be a focus on auras, but there's not really, in my opinion, there's not too much synergy in the deck doing that. But yeah, we'll get to it. So one of the rares in the deck is Thistledown Liege. Is 1 and 3 white-blue hybrid mana, which means you can cast it with any kind of combination of 3 white and blue mana. Hybrid mana being the big theme of Shadowmoor. So it's a 1/3 with flash. Other white creatures you control get +1/+1. Other blue creatures you control get +1/+1. So all these lieges I think are really, really good. Because it basically means this gives +2/+2 to pretty much every creature in the deck, which is really, really good. Especially at 4 mana and at flash means it can come in at instant speed. I never used to be too keen on Thistledown Liege. I used to think it was the weakest one, but I think having flash actually makes it pretty useful because it can then serve as basically as a combat trick. I think it's a pretty solid rare to have. Then we have 2 Thistledown duos, 2 and 1 white-blue hybrid. For a 2/2, whenever you play a white spell, it gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Whenever you play a blue spell, it gets flying until end of turn. It's fine. These duos are kind of like a cycle throughout the set. That you play a spell of one color, it gets +1/+1. You play the spell of the other color, it gets a sort of like a matching keyword. I think this is perfectly fine. I think most of the spells you play in it are you cast using hybrid mana. So they count as being both white spells and blue spells. So pretty much every spell you cast in this deck is going to give this +1/+1 and flying, which is pretty good, I think. 3 Glamour Spinners, so 4 and a white-blue hybrid for a 2/4 with flash and flying. When it comes into play, attach all auras enchanting target permanent to another permanent with the same controller. So you can use this. I think the key use for this card, I think, in this deck is to switch around your own auras. If you play an aura on like on an earlier creature, and then later game you play a better creature, you can play this and then swap the auras around. I think it's a little expensive, honestly, for what it does. Just being 5 mana for like a 2/4 with flash and flying is okay. I don't know, it just feels like a little expensive. It feels like a little kind of awkward to use. It's okay. I guess it's kind of like going along with the theme. But as I say, there's not too many actual auras in the deck to make it work. So I don't know. A single Mist Meadow Witch. This is pretty good. So 1 and hybrid mana for a 1/1. 2 colorless, 1 white and a blue. You basically flicker a creature, remove it, exile it, and then it comes back into play end of turn. So this is it's not flicker. Because there is a difference. So flicker is it comes back straight away. Blink is when it sort of comes back a little bit later. So this is a blink effect actually. But yeah, it's still pretty good. Especially in kind of Shadowmoor block where there's a kind of a lot of -1/-1 counters floating around, so you can use this to kind of like reset one of your creatures that's got a load of -1/-1 counters on it to kind of keep it healthy. It's fine. Also, it's just a way of triggering enter the battlefield abilities. Gets opponents' creatures out of the way for a turn while you attack, or stops them attacking. Pretty flexible card, and actually kind of wish there'd been an extra one of this really in the deck rather than 3 Glamour Spinners. Maybe like 2 of each would have been a bit better. We have 2 Pure Sight Marrow, so 2 hybrid mana for a 2/2. So 1 white, so 1 hybrid mana and untap. So this is the other weird little kind of gimmick of Shadowmoor was the untap symbol. So some creatures have untap abilities. So if they're tapped, you can. It's exactly the same as an ability that requires it to tap, except it has to be tapped already to use the ability. So 1 hybrid mana and untap. Look at the top card of your library. You can exile it, which is. I suppose it's okay as an ability. Like it gets rid of like dead draws. Like you got land coming up, and you don't need land anymore. I guess. But the untap abilities are kind of weird. They're obviously not as easy to trigger. as abilities that require you just to tap, because normally this is going to require you to attack with it first. That's the normal way of getting something to tap. You've got a few other abilities, I guess, that can tap your own creatures, and there's a few here on this page. But in general, untap abilities. In my experience when we were playing Shadowmoor back in the day, they fell into two categories, and they were either really awkward to use and kind of not worth it, or really obviously broken combo potential. There was like no in between with untap abilities. I think it's interesting design space, but like I don't think it's been used since. Maybe because I don't know, it didn't test very well or something, or it's just too easy to abuse. Have a way to untap a creature. I don't know. Single Silkbind Fairy, so 2 and a hybrid for a 1/3 flyer. Has 1 and a hybrid and untap to tap target creature. So this is the way I guess you could, you know, you could tap your other stuff that has untapped abilities. But I say Pure Sight Mero's ability is like not wonderful in my opinion. I suppose it is just looking that you don't have to exile it. It's just looking at the top card, but it's still pretty weak effect. Silkbind's okay, but I say just the fact that it needs to be tapped ready to use the ability just makes it really awkward to use. It's like I would always prefer like a normal kind of like Master Decoy equivalent like over this, or Gold Meadow Harrier. This just I think just takes too much effort to work. 2 Somnomancers, 1 and a hybrid mana for a 2/1 when it comes to play tap target creature. So this is okay. I think it's just perfectly fine. Just 2 mana creature. And 3 Zealous Guardians is just 1 hybrid mana for 1/1 with flash. Essentially just a combat trick. You can just make a 1/1 blocker. It's just not very impressive at just being a 1/1 with flash, and that's all it does. And then the other rare of the deck is a Twilight Shepherd, who's first let's talk about the art, which is lovely. But the actual card itself, so 3 and 3 white. 5/5 with flying and vigilance, so like really big threat in the air. Honestly, it's essentially Sarah Angel. And when it enters the battlefield, return to your hand all cards in your graveyard that were put there from play this turn. So this is pretty good. Gets back creatures and auras that got destroyed that turn. So pretty good. This could be a good second main phase play after you've had a big combat maybe, and you want to get it all back. Is back to hand, not back into play, which is, it's still good. It's like potentially getting a lot of stuff back at once. And it also has persist, which means if it dies and it didn't have a -1/-1 counter on it, it comes back into play with a -1/-1 counter on it. So then you get this effect all over again, which is which I think is pretty good. Pretty fun rare. I'm not sure it synergizes maybe too well with the rest of the deck. But I think it's still a good card. I just wonder if it could have been maybe something else. But it is still good. It's still just a big flying creature with like a decent effect. So yeah. A single Barrington Medic, so 4 and a white for a 0/4, which is horrible. Tap to prevent 1 damage that reduct target creature play on this turn, and you can put a -1/-1 counter on it to untap it. This is just bad. Like 5 mana for a 0/4. It's it's Samite Cleric. It's just tap to prevent 1, and but you can put a -1/-1 counter it to untap it, so you can just kill it if you need to prevent more than 1 damage. It's just really bad. I would take this out almost immediately. I don't care if that ability makes it kind of you can prevent more than 1 damage in a single turn. You still have to get 5 mana down to play a 0/4. That's just I have no idea why it's so bad. Anyway, I felt this could have been like 2 or 3 mana easily. Like it didn't need to be 5. A single Kithkin Rabble, so 3 and a white for an XX with vigilance. Its power and toughness equal number of white permanents you control, which is fine pretty much. You got a lot of white permanents in the deck, so this can get pretty big. And being vigilance means it then stays as a good blocker as well. Yeah, pretty good. 2 Parapet Watchers, so 2 and a blue for a 2/2, and it has a sort of a toughness boosting ability that you can use white or blue mana for, which is, it's fine, just very serviceable, bit boring, but it's fine, I suppose. A single Scrap Basket, so 4 mana for a Scarecrow. It's a 3/2 and has an ability you can pay 1, and it becomes all colours until end of turn. Which is fine because then it gets the boosts from your liege. It gets the boost from the auras that we're going to see in a bit. It counts towards things that care about having white or blue permanents. Yeah, I think it's okay. Like for 4 mana, it's all right. And a single Watchwing Scarecrow, 4 mana. For a 2/4, it has vigilance as long as you control a white creature, and it has flying as long as you control a blue creature. So this is one of these these color matter scarecrows that I think this is probably I was going to say it's the best one. I think it's the best one. I think it's probably one of the better ones. Like 4 mana for a 2/4 with flying and vigilance is pretty good. Obviously it's so dependent on getting the keyword abilities. If it doesn't have it, then it's obviously very overcosted. But I think it's fine as a common. So moving on to the auras, which is like what the deck's meant to be doing, I guess. So we have a single Armored Ascension, which is 3 and a white. Goes on a creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each planes you control and has flying. Like, really solid card. It is unfortunate that it is in a white-blue deck. Like half your lands are islands, so you're not going to get full potential out of this, I think. But I think even giving like +3/+3 makes this pretty good. Turns like a lot of creatures into pretty much like a really immediate threat. And obviously it just keeps getting better and better. So I think this is okay. I think it's okay. I mean, it is definitely a good card. I say it's obviously better in a mono white deck, but yeah, it's good here. Again, kind of wish there'd actually been more than one of it to make some of your smaller blue-white creatures, more of a threat in the air. 2 Curse of Chains, so 1 hybrid mana for a aura that goes on a creature. At the beginning of each upkeep, tap target creature. So if you're really desperate, you can put this on on your Silkbind Fairy or your Pure Sight Mirror if you really, really wanted to. Normally, this is obviously best on a creature. It's basically kind of like pacifism, isn't it? It's essentially going to stop something from attacking or blocking if it gets tapped down every upkeep. Yeah, it's okay, I think. 2 Prison Term. This is pretty good. So 1 and 2 white. Aura goes on a creature. It's basically a rest. It stops them attacking or blocking, and it can't activate its abilities. Whenever a creature comes into play under an opponent's control, you can then attach Prison Term to that creature. So as basically more threatening creatures come out, you can move Prison Term onto their new stuff. So yeah, pretty good, I think. Yeah, really, really solid aura. And then 3 Steel of the Godhead. This is like your big buff aura as well. So 2 and a hybrid. Enchanted creature. As long as enchanted creature is white, it gets +1/+1, has lifelink. As long as it's blue, it's +1/+1 and unblockable. So those 2 abilities combined, obviously if you can get both of them, that's really going to give you something that's going to help end the game very quickly. Even on, say, like the Pure Sight Marrow, becoming a 4/4 that's unblockable and has lifelink is going to be really difficult for an opponent to deal with. And yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wish there'd been more cards like this in the deck, like more auras that buffed up your own things. But yeah, this is a really solid aura. Like all these like god auras are really good in Shadowmoor and Eventide. And then just a few more cards just to kind of round things off. So 2 Niveus Wisps, just 1 white mana. Makes a creature white until end of turn, and you tap it down, you draw a card. Yeah, I suppose it's kind of like a combat trick, stops an attacker or a blocker, I guess, and you get to draw a card out of it, and potentially you mess around with their colour, so switching off any bonuses they're potentially getting. A single Mine Excavation, so 1 and a white, you get a artifact or enchantment back into hand, and it has an ability called Conspire, which is this other kind of mechanic which you introduced in Shadowmoor and Eventide. So Conspire is, as you play it, you can tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a colour with the spell, and if you do, you basically get a second copy of the spell. So it's just whether you want to kind of tap 2 of your creatures down to get a second copy. Normally it's worth it, I think, especially for if you're getting enchantments back, which is, I say, kind of a lot what the deck is meant to be about, but it doesn't really feel too much like it. I say you've only got 8 auras in here, but yeah. Single Repel Intruders, 3 and a hybrid. Put 2 1/1 white Kithkin soldiers into play if white was spent to cast it, and counter up to 1 target creature spell if blue was spent to cast it. So this is potentially good. I think this is obviously at its best if you can get both effects, countering a creature spell and getting some tokens on the board is obviously pretty good. If you needed to, you can cast it with just white mana or just blue mana, but obviously then it's really overcosted. So yeah, it kind of feels bad, but at least the option is there, I suppose. It's okay. And then 2 Thought Weft Gambits, so 4 and 2 hybrid. Tap all creatures your opponents control and untap all creatures you control. So this is pretty good, I think. Again, if you're like, you go to declare attackers, tap everything down, Thought Weft Gambit, all your stuff untaps, all their stuff taps before they can declare it as blockers, all your stuff gets through, and then you've got blockers ready for next turn. So yeah, very, very big swingy spell. I think it's pretty good. So what could have been? Yeah, I think this deck needs a little bit more. I don't know why it's trying to do this focus on auras when like there just isn't the card selection available to really do that. It's not like it's not like Shadowmoor as a set is full of like kind of good auras. I would have just made this kind of like, I say, like blue-white skies or blue-white kind of just evasive creatures, I suppose, or just kind of make it, yeah, I don't know, would have taken it in a different direction. So Ballinot Cohort, I think, would be pretty good. So it's 3 mana for a 2/2 with first strike, and it gets +1/+1 as long as you control another white creature, which I think is pretty solid, honestly. Just being a 3/3 with first strike for 3 is, I think, pretty good. Turn to Mist. I actually maybe would have lent more into the sort of flicker blink effects, I suppose, like with the Mist Meadow Witches. Maybe have more things that have like enter the battlefield effects, maybe. But Turn to Mist is essentially Mist Meadow's Witch's ability, but as a card. Yeah, it's good. I think would have had it in. If you wanted to really like keep up with the enchantment theme, I guess Greater Auramancy could have been an alternate rare. It's 1 and a white. Gives all your enchantments Shroud, and enchanted creatures have Shroud, which is, yeah, I suppose. And Augury Adept could have been another potential rare as well. So 3 mana for a 2/2. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you look at the top card of your library, you put it into your hand, and you gain life equal to its mana value. So yeah, just draws your card and gains your life, which is kind of very essentially quintessentially blue-white, I suppose. So in summary, it feels a bit disappointing. Honestly, it feels a bit weak and unfocused in terms of its theme. I say it's meant to be about auras, but not really. I mean, when I hear aura mastery, I think, oh, okay, well, I'm gonna play some creatures and load them up with good auras. But like half the auras in this deck are for putting on your opponent's creatures, like the Curse of Chains and the Prison Term. So all you've really got to work with is 1 Armored Ascension and 3 Steel of the Godhead, and then honestly a pretty uninspired selection of other cards. It's just kind of like, I say, blue-white soft control options, and kind of small evasive-ish creatures or like defensive creatures. I think it'd be kind of a boring deck to play, honestly. It feels like it'd be quite stally, quite boring, wouldn't be able to do much in combat, I guess. I don't know. I'm not impressed by it, honestly. I mean, it's fine. It probably worked absolutely fine, but it's not ticking my boxes. It's blue white. What a surprise! My least favorite color combination. But that's my thoughts on the deck after looking at it. What are your thoughts? Did you have this deck? Do you have any opinions or stories or thoughts about the deck after seeing it? Please put a comment below. Always like reading those. But I'll be back next time to look at another Shadowmoor pre-constructed deck. But until then, thanks for watching and listening. Have a great day.